It's okay to be a mom and travel alone. It's quite liberating to have conversation after conversation with people and not talk about your kids. It's okay to be older and travel alone. Yes, there's a stereotype that most backpackers are in their 20s, but as I've traveled, I've met more and more people on mid-career breaks in their 30s, 40s, and older. So now when someone asks me my age, I just lie a little bit, get down to like the low 40s, early 40s, without having to go too much lower than that. I extend family trips and business trips for the opportunity to have a few days on my own. So I don't travel much for work. I'm a consultant. I work from my desk at home. But I just had a conference in San Antonio this past week and made plans to rent a car and drive to Houston and go see some friends that I hadn't seen there. I'd never been to Houston. I have an annual conference in Las Vegas. Like, I hate Vegas. I love to hate Vegas, but I rented a car. I did Red Rocks and I did Lake Mead. I had some unbelievable couple days off strip, really enjoying the nature. Last year for spring break, we went to Colorado as a family. We had a great road trip, and at the end of the road trip, I dropped them at the airport. I kept the car. I drove 2 hours south, and I did an amazing 4 days in Arches and Canyonlands doing hiking. That's not their thing. That's my thing, right? So it's not really even adding. We're already there. We've already paid for the ticket. We're already in the car. It's really just tacking on a few extra days. Really adding on one day before or after a business trip can be totally invigorating, right? Take advantage of one of the Jews' great gifts to American culture, sleepaway camp, right? 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months. I haven't done that. I'm ready for it. I started, personally, my kids, they could start going into 3rd grade, and both my kids went as soon as they were going into 3rd grade. And for those who have kids in sleepaway camp, I never have good Wi-Fi where I'm traveling during that time, so I make my husband hit refresh and send me the pictures. Okay, use your vacation days, people. Look at the statistic. There are so many unused vacation days on the table, right? Now, I understand this all begs the question, how do I get the time to take a week off here and a day off here and a month off here? So as I mentioned, I began working for myself, my own consultancy a few years ago. So I have a great boss. And I have unlimited vacation days in that I have the flexibility to do my work from my desk at home or from a desk in Bangalore or Rio or Muscat. Right? I have a husband who supports my travel habit. We happen to have moved back to DC. My husband and I got engaged and married in California because I'm from here and my parents are here. So I have incredibly supportive parents who fill in a lot of gaps. And of course I have a network of babysitters I rely on too. But I was never afraid to use my vacation days. And when Adam and I were young, before kids, we never ended the year with any remaining. We were often in the hole. And I also have to admit that we might have creatively used some sick days along the way. And I do want to talk, and maybe this is for parents in the room with adult children, you can encourage, we got leave of absences. And you think it's something so impossible, right? My employer would never let me do that. But when you think about, if you give notice, right, they have to write a new job description, they have to work with HR, they have to advertise it, they have to bring people in, da-da-da, then they gotta hire them, then they gotta train them. So if you come in and you say, I want a month, I need a month, I need 2 months, right? Whatever that sweet spot is going to be. We were surprised. We got to yes with both of the employers that we had asked. So it might seem impossible, but it's not impossible. I'm going to switch a little bit of how do I sort of keep some costs down as I travel. And again, mine might be a bit crazy. Everyone has their own preferences. Again, with my husband, he appreciates creature comforts like air conditioning or pools. But for me, when I travel alone, I like to sleep in hostels. Now, I don't do dorms. I book a single. But hostels have a communal kitchen, a lounge area. I do try to find the ones with a rooftop bar because it's very conducive to meeting other people. I like to travel alone. I don't really like to be alone. So it's a really fun, easy way to have a put-in point that kind of bigger Western hotels don't really offer. I eat street food. Now I pack in Pepto, and Imodium, and Cipro, and I make wise choices, you only pick the one that has a line so you know the food is fresh. But I'll be honest, I don't like eating alone. I will do so much on my own. I despise sitting at a table by myself. So when I travel alone, I eat street food. But it's surprising when you're in a line, people are curious about you. where are you from? How do you like my country? Then you get your food, how do you like the food? So I end up having all these conversations with broken English and hand gestures, so it often becomes a social experience. But there are other ways. My husband travels alone for work all the time, and his MO is he'll find a restaurant that has a bar. And he goes and sits at the bar, and that's very conducive to conversations with the bartender, with the person next to you, or even if it's not, you're engaged in the world in a different way than sitting at a table. So there's just different ways to make it happen. I happen to like riding public transportation. You know, it's not as quick and easy as getting your own car and driver or taxi. It's way more colorful. These are chicken buses in Guatemala. This is actually Victoria Station in Mumbai, where they filmed the famous dance scene in Slumdog Millionaire. And you get a lot more local color. These are actual pictures of, one is in Africa. Well, these are actually both in Africa. You can see the goat getting loaded onto the top of the bus in one. And then this is like, it's like a shuttle taxi, somebody's fish from the market, or dried fish. So like, you don't get, you're really experiencing local culture when goats are getting loaded on the roof deck. And then I really try to do all the unusual modes of transport available to me. So it's tuk-tuks, it's rickshaws, pedicabs. Like this is a motorcycle that literally they're like taxi drivers, and they've got a little seat, you get on the back and they bike you to where you're going. Each one gets kind of progressively cheaper, and like you are really like immersive in the street environment when you're going down to like a bicycle, pedicab, or a tuk-tuk. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to shift a minute to some ways to really assure that you're going to have a rewarding and immersive experience, and I'm going to shift a bit to volunteer travel, which is actually new for me. I've done 2 different volunteer trips now. I started actually 3 years ago. I went to India, and I had a month in India. And I spent my first 10 days working at an orphanage in Jaipur. And it was a great way to kind of plug in to like a local neighborhood. There were some other volunteers and a coordinator to have like a local community, and to get my sort of feet on the ground in India, have a place to call home, feel like I was giving back. And then when I traveled for the 2 weeks after, I traveled like a local. It was a great way to connect, see the world, and get my confidence up for the travel that was going to follow. And maybe my confidence was so high that I then was crazy enough to drag my kids last summer for my daughter's bat mitzvah community service project. We went to Zambia, Africa, and we spent 2 weeks building literal mud hut houses in a small village. And there's a lot of grandmothers there that are raising their grandchildren because their adult children have passed away from AIDS. And they're in these one-room sort of huts, and they might be raising 6, 7, 8, 9 grandkids, and they could apply through kind of the village elders and get permission, and we would come in and build the house, and literally making mud balls and mud walls. So it was, and we're walking through the village and shopping at the village market, and it was a really immersive, authentic way to see kind of the real Zambia, the real Africa. Here's just some shots of us at work. Like the floor is mud. I mean, we're spreading the mud on the floor here. We also, as part of that experience, spent a couple mornings in a local preschool. So my kids got to play teacher. I love this because you can see like, I mean, here's like oxen being herded behind our little class breakout. And a few things, sorry, I just meant tea. And a couple side benefits is, one, I mean, kids are kids wherever you go in the world, right? So here they are doing, I don't know, when I was growing up, it was like Miss Mary Mack. I don't know, I forget what the games are now, but they can find each other. They don't need a common language. These games still work. A real highlight was at the volunteer program we did, was there was a crew of like 9, 21, and 22-year-old British medical students. And this is Vivi, she's 11. She thinks she's just part of that posse, and we're playing charades or celebrity, and she's part of that group, right? And then the best part, of course, is the kids really needed to rely on each other. I love these like photographs of them getting along, and I sneak a picture from the back. Anyway, so just incredibly rewarding as a family. I encourage, as a family or alone, to find those opportunities. Right? I'll switch back to solo. My advice when you travel, whether or not you're on your own or family, husband, a lot of the magic happens when you push yourself out of your comfort zone, as kind of Janice said, and say yes to the invitations and opportunities that come your way. I can't tell you how many times I'd be in my food line and I'd be invited back to someone's house to meet their family, and say yes. And so a few fun things that have happened. So I'm walking around, this was in Jaipur, and I hear some singing from a little local temple, and I peer in, and there's women sitting around chanting, and they do this, you know, and how easy would it have been for me to be like, no, I'll just stand here. And they did it again, and I walk in, and I sat down, and I spent like a half hour like singing and chanting with them, right? It was amazing. Or the time, also, actually this was from a food line, and we're chatting, and I'm invited back to this guy's house, and you know, I'm safe, I make sure, you know, I made sure before I went into a house, like, is your wife here? You know, he had the wife come down, right? So I get up and I get actually a home-cooked meal and a free henna tattoo. You know? That was a great experience. Or this was a great story. I was on my own in West Africa. You can tell I'm much younger here. This is some years ago. And I was like waiting for a bus. I don't know what happened. Like on the bus is this church group doing like their church retreats, and they invite me to come along. So instead of getting off the bus where I'm supposed to go, I get off with them. We sleep in some, I mean, I'd call it a gymnasium, it's Africa, you know, we're sleeping on the floor of this building, and we go on this amazing hike through this village, and we meet like the elder king of the village and his children. So it was this like amazing experience because I got off the bus with the church group, right? And so these things, you have to be open to it and make it happen. And the final thing I'll say is about proactivity. Now, granted, I'm social and I'm an extrovert, so but it doesn't always come easy, right? You're awkward, you're on your own. And all of these pictures, right, all these group shots and these big smiles, right? I was traveling alone on every single one of these trips, right? And it's just going up and kind of saying like, hey, I'm alone, can I join you? You know, at a dinner time, I'll go, if I'm at a restaurant, you know, I'll walk up to a table and say, I'm alone, can I join you? I'm traveling alone. And I've ended up, you know, I met one person who met 3 people, and we all took a hike together. And this was at the top of a mountain. You know, all these experiences happen. You have to make it happen. You have to be proactive. And I'll never forget, actually, when I was 24 and the first time I used my Europass. I'm going from Paris to Prague. It's like a 17-hour trip. And I'm alone in a car, and the train starts moving, and I'm totally alone. And I hear some laughter and giggling. I hear like American-sounding girls a few cars over. And I said, I'm gonna take my bag and go sit in their car. And guess what? I went over, I sat in the car, I traveled with them for 2 weeks. You know? And then I traveled with them. So these things, you have to push yourself and make it happen. And it feels awkward, I admit, but like the reward is so strong. So how do I wrap this up? I admit I'm a bit extreme and I'm a bit crazy in my ways. But your trips don't need to be to Bhutan or Bangladesh. You can go do a day trip to New York City on your own, or an overnight in Annapolis, or take yourself on a weekend to San Francisco. I believe that the experiences of traveling alone are an investment in yourself, in your growth, in your development, and it's an important channel to finding your true, authentic self. I'm still looking for me, but with each trip, I strip off more layers and I get a little closer. So I challenge you, take yourself on a trip, do something for yourself. For the grandparents in the room who have adult children, encourage your adult daughters. Go spend a week with your grandkids and encourage them to go do something for themselves. I really think it makes you a better person, a better mom, and a better wife. It helps you find your most authentic self, and I would love to help you brainstorm and plan your trip. And if you want to follow mine, follow me on Facebook, or I'm starting a blog with my CrazyTraveler Kippas. And so when I'm in the Caucasus this summer, and then in India when my kids are at camp, I'll be trying to post regularly, and I encourage you to follow along. So thank you for having me. I'm happy